Steelers insider Ray Fittipaldo joins us now. He, of course, is from the Post-Gazette, and he's brought to you by LGKG, the born and raised Western PA injury attorneys who take your personal injury cases personally. Doran, it's just come out in the last few moments. The Dallas Cowboys and Kansas City Chiefs are going to play on Thanksgiving, 4:30 p.m. on CBS. We'll see whether or not if George Pickens is on time for that holiday game.
Yeah, maybe not.
Not on time for the Chiefs-Steelers game on Christmas Day. Ray, good morning to you. We know the Steelers play at Detroit this year. You think they could wind up on Thanksgiving? Have you heard anything about the Steelers playing on holidays this year?
You know, I would be surprised, guys. I was looking at some of the recent trends with NFL scheduling yesterday, and, a couple of things. Typically, with a few exceptions, but typically when you play an international game, they're going to schedule your bye week the week after. So I think Steelers are probably looking at the first week of October for the bye week. Now,
Real quick on that, and this could be wrong, but I had somebody who might be in the know, a capital S somebody, tell me that the Steelers have requested. Now, I don't know if the NFL is going to listen to this. They've requested to not have their bye week that early. They don't want to have a week 5 bye.
Yeah, I don't know if the Steelers have a say in that or not, but if you just look at recent history, when teams come back from that type of a travel, the NFL typically schedules it that way. So that I would be surprised if the Steelers don't have the first week of October. And then the second trend I was looking at, and listen, the Steelers are a national brand, so they might be an exception, but I would be surprised if they play on Christmas or Thanksgiving this year, just because the NFL has leaned on them so much over the years. They were on Christmas Day last year. I don't think they would ask them to do that again. So I don't think it's going to be Detroit on Thanksgiving either.
If the Steelers did play Detroit on Thanksgiving, do you think Caleb Johnson calls heads or tails if it goes to overtime, Ray?
Jerome Bettis. They played, in Indianapolis on Thanksgiving a few years ago.
Yes.
But they haven't been back in Detroit since then. So
also, the famous Mike Tomlin going to trip Jacoby Jones game was a Thanksgiving night game at M&T Bank Stadium. Ray, did you cover the – go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, back when I was a kid, I think 1983, they lost like 45-3 to the Lions on Thanksgiving Day, but that was a million years ago. So,
Ray, this wasn't quite a million years ago, but the last time the Steelers played internationally was against the Vikings. Did you cover that game?
I did not. I was back in Pittsburgh. I think just Jerry and Ed and maybe a columnist went. But what I remember about that game, guys, is it was my daughter's birthday, September 29th, and Elsie Greenwood passed away that day. So we were having a birthday party at my house for my daughter. She was obviously very young then, and I had to write an obit on Elsie Greenwood, and that kind of got my wife mad at me. But,
Ray, what have you heard? Who have you heard? Or who would you want to see? Who entices you for the Steelers to open up the NFL season with on week 1?
I love it when they open with division games, but the NFL has kind of, put that off until the end of the season. But I love it. There was, a couple, I want to say like 5-7 years ago, they would always open with the Browns. I would love to see that again. But more and more, Doran, I think they're going to NFC games or, conference games that aren't within the division. But I used to love it when they would play AFC North games early in the season. But it just seems like they try to, trick this thing up at the end of the season where you have all these TV matchups with playoff implications. So, it'll probably be an NFC team or I heard you guys talking before. Somebody left the Dolphins, probably something like that.
Ray, we'll get down to some nuts and bolts questions about this roster in a couple of minutes, but what's more intriguing to you if Aaron Rodgers is a Pittsburgh Steeler, the matchup against the Jets or the matchup against the Packers?
The Packers, because that's where his history is. I mean, his Hall of Fame career is defined by the Packers. I think that would be – listen, if they put that game in prime time for the opener, I would love it. I mean, I think the networks would be all over that game. So I know they got to spread it out. Other teams are are going to be in play. But I would be surprised. And you don't know if Aaron Rodgers is going to be here or not, definitely. But I would be surprised if that's not an early season, like Sunday night football game.
Ray, when the season starts, what do you think the split will be at running back? They'd obviously just signed Trey Sermon. Don't know if he's even going to make the team. Might be a practice squad or might be the fourth back. But between Jalen Warren, Caleb Johnson, and Kenneth Gainwell, how do you think the split is going to go between those three?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be close to 50-50. I think they will defer to Jalen Warren early in the season, and they're not going to hand anything over to Caleb Johnson. But I think at least to start, it might be 55-45, 60-40 in favor of Warren, and, a couple snaps here and there, for Kenneth Gainwell. But I think I told you guys right after the draft, I would not be surprised at all if by season's end it's pretty close to a 50-50 split. There is a reason they went out and got Caleb Johnson in the third round. They had him higher than a third-round pick. They were surprised when he was still there. So they are excited about him. And at rookie minicamp last Friday, he was the first guy that stood out to me. I saw him going through drills. He was all rocked up. I'm like, okay, give me the roster. Who's number 20? And it was Caleb Johnson. He looks every bit the part of an NFL football player.
Ray Fittipaldo of the Post-Gazette joining us here on the Fan Morning Show. Ray, I've seen a lot come out about George Pickens since the trade, things that either beat writers were sitting on and didn't report, or things that were perhaps passed along now that Pickens isn't a teammate. Have you heard any Pickens horror stories that otherwise went unreported before?
No, I just think, what we've learned since the trade is it wasn't one thing that forced them to make this deal. It was just the accumulation of everything that happened last season. And, at some point over the offseason, they just made the decision that they were going to move on from him. So, we can go back and detail every little thing that happened, but I don't think there was one thing that said, okay, we got to trade George. No, I just think when they made that decision, guys, to go out and acquire DK Metcalf and to sign him to a $150 million contract, I think the writing was on the wall then. I think a lot of people sort of got, on paper, Pickens and Metcalf. No, that was never going to happen. If it was going to happen, it was going to happen for one season. So when they made that decision to sign DK Metcalf, we all knew they were going to move on from George eventually, and eventually the Cowboys gave them the right offer.
Ray, I just asked you the question about the running back split between the three of them. What do you think the split would be between Mason Rudolph and Will Howard if Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot of speculation about Kirk Cousins, right? Like, would you want to go out and get a guy like that, or would you want to just go out and get a better backup than Skylar Thompson, right? Because do you really want to put pressure on Will Howard, to be in a quarterback competition as a rookie? So I would imagine if that was a scenario, obviously Mason gets the bulk of the reps. They would prepare him to be the starter. And I'm just throwing out names here. I don't even know if this guy signed within the last week. Maybe you upgrade to a Carson Wentz over a Skylar Thompson, and then you keep Will Howard as the number 3, but you still give him plenty of reps in camp, and you still get him plenty of reps in the preseason, because you want to find out what that guy is all about this year, because you're going to be on the hunt for a quarterback next year. So I want to see Will Howard as much as I can in July and August, because I want to know what he's all about before they go into the scouting process for the 2026 draft.
Last thing here for you, Ray. What % chance would you give the Steelers of signing a wide receiver that's not just some camp body, that's not like in the Robert Woods mold, but more in the Amari Cooper mold?
Yeah, especially if Aaron Rodgers signs. I'm not saying he would handpick a guy, but I think they would try to get a guy that he would want on the roster. So, percentage chance. If Aaron Rodgers is here, I would say 60%. If he's not here, maybe that goes down to about 30-40%.
Ray Fittipaldo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He's the man. Appreciate your time, buddy. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, guys. We'll see you.
Thanks, Ray.
Ray Fittipaldo.